the sun, I'm assuming, is coming from this direction, about 45 degrees. So it's going to catch the belly, the widest part of the boat here, in the greatest light. But as the stern curves under there and the bows curve around slightly away from it, these areas are going to be in slight shadow. I'm leaving little white flecks there, going over the red as well, like that. And I'm doing that quite quickly and then curving that up like that very quickly. While that's still damp, I'm going to thin that out. Because you don't have a hard edge on the boat, it's a sort of a rounded edge, we're just going to blend that away. We're creating that soft edged shadow on the boat, which gives us the distinctive rounded shape. And then we can just blot that out a little bit, take the bulk of that out. Again, if you don't trust yourself to be quick enough with the brush and washing out, just dampen the hull of the boat and then just let it all blend nicely, like we did here in the water. Right, in the same way, I'll just use a little bit of that same shadow colour at the front end of the cabin area there, like that. Now the cabin area here has got a blue storm protector, so I'm going to paint that a little bit stronger. That again will stand out against this background here. Right, now we put some fairly dark colour in for the cabin windows. Part of this is catching the light, and so it's reflecting back. Right, now just let's summarise where we're up to. I've put this reflection on here, making sure I've used horizontal strokes, and I've used a dark brown colour mixed up with the light red and the burnt umber that we use in a very pale wash on the roofs, and I've added a little bit of ultramarine blue here and there, and that's given us a nice dark reflection. We've made sure that the reflections just not quite touch the boats here, so we've retained a little bit of a silvery line around the edge, and we've made sure that with these horizontal strokes we've also left some little gaps to represent little ripples in the water. We've then added some shadow to the boat here in this sort of semicircle, almost like created a banana shape, or we've left a white banana shape and created the rest in shadow. That captures the curves of the boat, and then we put some dark colours in the cabin areas, but we've left one or two of them light because they would be reflecting the light. And then finally some shadows on these fenders on the side of the boat, and it shows us, because of that little gap, that the fenders are not quite touching the side of the boat. Now the next thing is, how do we get this white area in when we've already got a light area and water? Well, what we're going to do is put another wash of very pale blue over the water, or over most of the water, but we're going to leave it in the area generally where the white of the boat is, and that will in effect negatively create the light part of the reflections that we want to achieve below the boat. And you can see already how without any effort we're actually creating those little sort of ripples in the way in which we do the reflection. It's just a line which really, if you haven't got a steady hand, it probably helps. Right, now we're going to go over this area when it's absolutely bone dry, including this area here, in a liquid wash. And as I get up to the reflected area of the white hull, I'm just going to leave that slightly and paint around the reflected area. So in other words, I'm going to create a negative reflection almost by painting around the reflection very loosely with this darker colour. Oh, I nearly forgot, I've put the reflection in of the mooring post. Right, we've got the mix of ultramarine blue. I'm just adding a touch of raw sienna and a little touch of lemon yellow, just to sort of green it a little bit, because we want that sort of greeny grey effect. Remember, I don't know whether you can see here that it's just a little tiny touch of the pencil line. You can probably see these pencil marks here for the fenders and the top of the mast. So I've got a fair idea where this white is going to finish. Right, I'm simply and very, very lightly going to bring this across like that, and I'm quite happy to hit and miss in places here and there. I'm not at all worried about adding some extra water in. It gives a little bit of a sparkle on the water. I'm going through the existing reflections, no problem with that. It doesn't matter if the things aren't absolutely horizontal like that, that doesn't matter. It's as long as the general line of the paint of the brush strokes stays sort of side to side rather than up and down. Right, now we're getting towards the boat, so we're starting to miss out some of the white area like that. Don't go back into something because it will dry fairly quickly. Because you're doing a dry brush effect, you will find that it'll dry out fairly quickly. I'll just go into that area there because that's going to be quite dark. Now you can see I'm putting some little streaks across the line of where the hull is, because I don't want it completely flat. I want some little ripples here and there like that. We've got a much darker mix for this part with more raw sienna added to make it greener. You can see how it creates that sort of shadow on the water just beyond the boat, but it also helps the hull to stand out better against the lighter background. And you can see I'm putting some of that below the harbour wall, and that's running up to the stern. Much the same idea about making the stern stand out. And finally, just a hint over the hull where it meets the water. Right, now that's all dried, and with the 1/2 inch flat I'm taking out some lighter areas in the water for the reflection of the boat's fenders. Now once that's dry, you can see I've gone back in with the round brush and I've just touched in some wavy lines for the actual reflections. You don't want them too distinct though, because you don't want them jumping out at you, just enough to show that they're actually there. And then as you can see, I'm doing the same for the reflection of the blue cabin cover. The masking fluid's been taken off the mast and the guardrails and other bits and bobs on the boat, and as you can see I'm using a 1/2 inch flat just to touch in some shadow colour so they start to stand out. Now this is a very useful technique for masts and the like, because although the flat brush makes it look relatively straight, it's not so straight that it looks like you've used a ruler. Right, now I'll put some strong dark colours, the same ones we've used in the rest of the picture, in the foreground here, and then added some very dark shadow areas, almost neat ultramarine blue and burnt umber here and there, just to give us some nice strong dark shadows and really make sure that the sunlight's turned on. I'm just going to finish off now by flicking in a few mooring ropes, bits and pieces of chains and what have you that really do sort of proliferate around this part of the harbour scene. I'm just going to put that in like that and then make sure that the reflection ripples back this way. Oh, one final little tip. You think, well hang on, I really need some lines and ropes to hold this mast in place to make it look authentic. Don't ever be afraid of taking the pencil and the ruler. Now the beauty of using pencil as well is, as I've drawn that in quite the wrong angle, it's going to go up in the air. It's not hanging on to anything, certainly not going to the mast. Then you get a second chance. If it all adds to the painting and helps to enhance it, then use what's necessary. You've found out now how to, in effect, paint by using the paint negatively to paint the reflections of a white hull in water. You've also seen how to paint reflections from these distant cottages and then go over those reflections with some added ripples here. And of course, we've had a little go here at these cottages, and although we're going to cover that in the next DVD on buildings, you've already seen here how by just using a dry brush effect and using a very loose style we can create a very convincing impression of cottages and sheds and corrugated roofs and all sorts. So there's an awful lot to take from this picture if you want to, and remember, just work at your own speed. That's the beauty of this DVD course. You don't have to work at anybody else's pace, only your own. So I hope you've enjoyed that and pick up on the things we covered with Porlock Weir and its multiple reflections.